So processes are explained as causes, and that doesn't work. In Ayurveda, we actually understand the root cause and we work on the root cause.
Ayurveda and AI, how is technology going to be used for this?
Because you're studying an individual, the amount of study and depth is very high. And artificial intelligence might be able to help a doctor or maybe help an individual in an extremely long run. Try to understand their prakriti, try to understand their actual body. In the olden days, living long was something that people really desired. People desire it today, so that desire has not changed much.
Yeah.
So, in fact, when you look at any treatment text in Ayurveda, the first text, specifically in something like Charak Samhita, which is like a Gita for Ayurveda, right? The first chapter in Chikitsa Sthan or in the treatment section of the book is Rasayan, and Rasayan is anti-aging.
So smart foods and functional nutrition are growing. So how does Ayurveda fit in this?
So Ayurveda looks at food in such depth that I don't think functional nutrition, I think, can even scratch the surface.
Namaste and welcome to Imperia Connects. Ayurveda has been around for centuries, but it's evolving in the ways we have never imagined. From AI-driven wellness to powerful, lesser-known remedies, today's conversation will change how you see holistic healing. With us today is Dr. Manaan Gandhi, a national award-winning Ayurvedic expert who's bridging the gap between tradition and modern science. Hello, Dr. Gandhi. Welcome to our show. It's a pleasure to have you with us today.
Thank you for having me today.
So Ayurveda is seen as an ancient science and it's rapidly evolving. So can you let me know, how is Ayurveda adapting to the modern world?
First of all, Ayurveda is a very Vedic, a very Indian science, not an Asian science. Although parts of Asia, different countries have taken parts of it. They've evolved it a little bit, they've changed it up a little bit, they've tried to suit it to their understanding. And Ayurveda, frankly, is neither adapting nor needs to adapt to the modern audience. Ayurveda is what we call as Shashwat, it's everlasting. Why is it everlasting? Is because it's a very holistic science. It's not only relevant, but it's also important in today's world to understand Ayurveda, because Ayurveda gives you a complete holistic understanding of the human body. Ayurveda works on 4 factors. It tells you that there are 4 factors that are responsible for diseases, and hence treating these 4 factors will actually result in coming out of these diseases. They are Ahar, Vihar, Achar and Vichar. So Ahar means your diet. Ayurveda really understands your diet. It really tells you how diet is related to not only a disease and a cure for it, but it's related also to a lot of psychological problems. The second is Vihar, which is the surroundings. Ayurveda is probably one of the very few sciences that explains how surroundings also affect the human body. For example, you probably are in one particular climatic condition that affects your body, but within that climatic condition, every weather change, every season change has an impact on the body which is well documented and well explained in Ayurveda. Treatments and remedies for them are also very well expounded. The third is Achar, which means that what you're doing, your entire regimen, whether you exercise, whether you don't, whether you're carrying heavy weight, whether you're doing certain activities. So Achar will also have an impact on your health. And the fourth is Vichar, which is thoughts. I've seen a lot of holistic healing modalities. I've come across many of them, maybe not all of them, but yet to see any science other than Ayurveda that works on all 4 of them. You'll probably have a dietitian, a nutritionist who will work on only the Ahar part. But if you have a stress-related diabetic problem, it's not really going to help. You will have people who will work on the Vihar, which means the surroundings. They'll give you color therapy, light therapy, XYZ. You will have people who will work on the Achar. They'll give you regimens, they'll give you exercises, they'll give you stretchings. They'll ask you to wake up early. They'll do all of these things. And there'll be people who will work on Vichar and counseling and all of that. But how many truly are there that actually work on all 4? And yet all of them claim to be holistic. So today alternate healing modalities somehow self-proclaim themselves to be holistic. I kind of doubt that.
So it's good. In a which ways it covers all the four aspects.
Ayurveda does, yes.
Yes, yeah. So many people believe that, Ayurveda works slowly compared to allopathy. So what's your take on this? Is it a myth?
Not really. For example, I mean, it is a myth, of course, but the statement by itself is not true. Let's say I've gotten very simple. Let me give you a simple example. I've gotten hurt. Okay. So if the process of that wound getting healed is, let's say, about hypothetically 3 days long, right? If I use Ayurvedic herbs, I would be treating that in about 1.5 days. But if I take a painkiller, I'll feel a relief in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So apparently it's 20 minutes to 1.5 day. But realistically it's 1.5 to 3 days. Because you'll be taking a painkiller for 3 days. The minute the pain appears, you'll take it again. It's a very crude example, but I think it gets the point across that allopathy is more symptomatic related, and it's a little obvious because it doesn't really understand the cause.
Yeah.
In fact, if you go to a doctor and if you ask why do you have the disease, you're probably going to be explained of how you have the disease. So for example, a patient would go and say, listen, I have insomnia. I'm not able to sleep. Why do I have insomnia? The doctor will say melatonin is not being generated and this is happening, and then it's causing this reaction and that reaction. That's not the why, that's the how. So processes are explained as causes, and that doesn't work. In Ayurveda, we actually understand the root cause and we work on the root cause, which is why it apparently seems that it takes a little longer. However, you're actually out of it for life. You're not just suppressing and delaying it, like a lawyer would do tariq pe tariq. It's not that.
You're working from the root cause of it.
We're working from the root cause, and which is why when most diseases are cured with Ayurveda, they seldom appear again. They almost don't.
So I wanted to ask you that you even treat a lot of chronic disease. So can you let me know some of the treatments that you have done and have really been wowed?
So we treat so many diseases. I'm actually trying to think which one do I need to share. But let's take, for example, asthma, right? So I treat a lot of asthma, and specifically, I have a lot of pediatric asthma cases wherein, really young kids, there's that age to go out and play, and to play football, to play cricket, to play sports, to be active. And asthma really hinders them. So I think this will also give a good example of why Ayurveda is working with chronic diseases much better than allopathy. So asthma in Ayurveda is explained as a stomach or a digestion based treatment, as in a cause. So it says that whenever you have indigestion, or whether you have something called as kapha dosh in the stomach, it disallows the vata movement downwards, and that moves upwards, displacing the mucus or the cough from the lungs, causing dryness in the lungs, and this causes asthma. It's a very crude explanation. I'm not going to go into the specifics of the pathophysiology, but simply try to understand that in Ayurveda, the root cause is the stomach. Wherein if you look at homeopathy or where you look at allopathy, the root cause is the lungs. So an allopathic doctor, when presented with an asthmatic patient, would focus on treating the lungs. So they'd probably give something like a bronchodilator for instant relief. They would nebulize a patient. They would give other medicines specifically targeting the lung organ. In Ayurveda, what we've been doing is we've been treating the stomach, and we've identified that although the lung is the affected organ, it is not the root cause of the problem. So the lung definitely needs to be addressed, and I'm not denying that fact, but that cannot be the sole target of our treatment. We have to focus on the gut, we have to focus on the lungs, and we have to do them in tandem. And then and only then will the treatment not only be effective, but it will last for very long. And which is why we've been extremely effective in treating asthma. In fact, I've won a national level award for that, for asthma, simply for doing this. And I've done no wonders. I've just followed the basic principles of Ayurveda. But that's what I'm trying to say. When you really understand the root cause of a disease, it's just so easy to treat them. And then people come and give you credit as if you've done something great, when you've just not.
Yeah. So as you mentioned about lung disease, so now, there has been a lot of news circling around about this, even kids nowadays, because of the air, the climate and everything, everyone's going through a lot of lung disease. So, is there any particular remedies like everyone could follow, all age groups?
The beauty of Ayurveda is that in Ayurveda we do not treat diseases, we treat individuals. Because of this, Ayurveda is an absolutely personalized treatment. So asking for generalized remedies for a personalized system, although at a certain level it probably might help, because I do give out home remedies and I probably will, right? However, if you really want to come out of a serious illness, I would actually rather you show to an Ayurvedic doctor nearby, and specifically someone who's really good at Nadi Parikshan. Because Nadi Parikshan is one of the advantages we have over either other Ayurvedic doctors or other modalities, is that Nadi Parikshan is a beautiful way to identify root cause of a problem. And that is why, we're very successful in treating these cases, specifically chronic cases in the long run. You can actually give relief with allopathy, and that's very easy to do. But when you're actually looking for a cure and not a relief, that's when Ayurveda really comes into the picture. However, now that you've asked me the question about giving some sort of a home relief for a patient who's suffering from, let's say, an asthmatic problem or a cold or a common cold. So asthma is a little different, but let me just give you a home remedy for a common cold. You can use something like a dry ginger powder. You can have half a teaspoon in the morning, half a teaspoon in the evening, about 20 minutes before your lunch and dinner respectively. That should give you some sort of a relief. Obviously, localized, sakes that you can do, which is basically hot fermentation. You can use a hot water bag, or you can just use a cloth, put it on a tawa, heat it, and you can give some sort of relief there, because when you give heat, you're actually causing a little bit of a dilation. So when you're dilating the bronchus, it becomes a little easier for the air to come in, because constriction is not so much, and mucus is also very, so it hates heat, right? So whenever you give any sort of heat in the body, it'll start liquefying, it'll start coming out, it'll start looking for ways to come out, and that will give you relief in terms of congestion.
Ayurveda and AI, how is technology going to be used for this?
Ayurveda has a set of principles that not only explains the gross body, but we also understand that there are 3 bodies that we have. There's a subtle body as well, which contains the energy levels, the nadis, chakras and all of that, and there's a causal body that is responsible for containing our karmic debts that we're here to fulfill. So putting in technology makes it easier for an Ayurveda doctor, specifically when it comes to diagnosis. Because as Ayurveda is so vast, it's very difficult for a common person to understand Ayurveda in its totality. It takes a lot of study, it takes a lot of effort, and it's not as easy as allopathy, because as I said, in allopathy you're studying diseases, and Ayurveda you're studying an individual. And the diversity in individuals far exceeds the diversity in diseases. So because you're studying an individual, the amount of study and depth is very high. And artificial intelligence might be able to help a doctor, or maybe help an individual in an extremely long run, try to understand their prakriti, try to understand their actual body and the genetic tendencies that their bodies has, because of not only the prakriti, but because of other factors as well, right? So I think AI will come into the picture not in terms of treatment, but more in terms of diagnosis. It could come in form of treatment, but that treatment will be a little more generic, but it'll really have an impact in terms of diagnosis. You have a couple of startups and a couple of companies who are trying to do Nadi Parikshan using AI. I don't know how successful they are. I think the ones that I've come across aren't that great. However, I think that's a good future to look at.
So now you see biohacking is trending these days. So will it help people for, aging?
So Ayurveda has done biohacking to an extremely high level. In fact, in the olden days, living long was something that people really desired. People desire it today, so that desire has not changed much. So in fact, when you look at any treatment text in Ayurveda, the first text, specifically in something like Charak Samhita, which is like a Gita for Ayurveda, right? The first chapter in Chikitsa Sthan, or in the treatment section of the book, is Rasayan, and Rasayan is anti-aging. So how do you anti-age? How do you reverse aging? I mean, you probably heard of Chavanprash and the story of how Chavan Rishi tried to reverse his aging using that herb. So this has been there forever. So there are two kinds of rasayan that we do. So Vata Tapik is basically when you're out in the samaj, you know, you're moving around, you're doing that, and then there are certain herbs that you can take that will definitely help you reverse aging. That will work as an anti-aging mechanism. And there is a second way which is a little more rigorous. It demands more of you, and that is Kuti Praveshik, wherein you actually go into an area. It's sort of a human hibernation program. So you go into an area where there is no sunlight, there is no air. You're only given few herbs as food, and it's more of a meditative state where you go into a deep meditation stage to reverse your aging. And there have been scientific studies, I think, by a doctor in Kerala long back, and there were scientific papers published on this, and they did reverse aging to a great extent. An old person started growing new teeth and new hair. I mean, I don't have all the details, but I did read this, and this was years back, I think 15 years back. Don't know if I have that study anymore, but I might search for it. But that is possible. It has.
So biohacking really helps for anti-aging.
Biohacking really helps, but a lot of times I feel that people don't understand that when we're talking about reversing sort of an age or doing something, it's not something that's different from spirituality. It's in fact embedded in it. So if you're not that calm, meditative person, you're not going to be able to go into those states where, you know, you're not going to go into the theta state, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not really going to be able to do this to a great extent. I mean, there will definitely be certain herbs that will help you, certain technologies that will help you. Ayurveda can help to a great extent doing all of this. But this is an entire spiritual program.
So smart foods and functional nutrition are growing. So how does Ayurveda fit in this?
Ayurveda does not fit in this. They fit in Ayurveda. Because Ayurveda has always been there. So Ayurveda looks at food in such depth that I don't think functional nutrition, I think, can even scratch the surface. Let me give you an example, right? So we look at 8 factors when it comes to nutrition. So we look at Prakriti, Karan, Sanyog, Rashi, Desh, Kal, Upyokta and Upyog Sanstha. So these are the 8 factors that we look into. I will explain all of them. Right? We look at these 8 factors. So Prakriti is basically your genetic predisposition. So for example, you know what is so great about the periodic table? Why is the periodic table considered great? Because we always knew that these elements were present. But then putting it into these specific rows and columns, why is that Nobel Prize worthy, and why is that you know, considered to be one of the greatest achievements in chemistry by humans? Is because when you put them in these specific rows and columns, what you're actually doing is, if you test one of these elements and how they react, you can predict the others. So it saves you so much scientific time and effort, right? Is because you can actually predict how the other elements that you have not yet tested will react because you've done one of them. And this is exactly what Prakriti brings to the table. So we classify every human, because every human is distinct, right? So we classify every human being into 7 kind of a like a periodic table, right? 7 columns. So it's either you're a Vata Prakriti person, you're a Pitta, you're a Kapha.
If you crack the first one, immediately the other one.
Exactly. So you can actually predict what kind of a person what kind of a person that is physically, mentally, how they will react to different diets, how they will react to different herbs, how they will react to different medicines, how they will react to different circumstances, situations, and even their specific spiritual needs are addressed through Prakriti. So when you actually categorize a human being into a particular Prakriti, you're actually making it easy. Otherwise, if I were to ask someone to remove every single thing about you, probably take 2 lifetimes to do that, and it won't be worth it in the end. So diet has to take into account Prakriti. The second is Karan. And when I talk about Karan, it's basically about processing. So the way you process your food really changes almost everything about the food. So for example, if I have rice that is cooked in a pressure cooker, right? That's really going to be a little weight gainy. It'll have a lot of problems. The glycemic index is going to go a little up. But if I cook the same rice in an open vessel, drain the water and give it to you, that's going to have a different impact. It'll be much easier to digest. It'll be So there are multiple changes, right?
Yeah.
I'm not going into the rice aspect because it's a very long answer, so I'll just keep it a little brief. So Karan, the third is Sanyog. So certain combinations don't work well. We have a concept of Viruddhahar, where things don't work together. A very simple, a very crude example here is, not proud of it, but when I was young and I didn't want to go to school, so we used to go to the Juhu beach and my dad used to run. And at that time, the first person who started this entire juice and soup walas that you see, outside all these
everywhere
joggers
right
parks
now.
and all of these
Yeah.
parks, was started there. So I used to have one garam soup, vegetable soup, one thanda kokam varyali juice, and then repeat with a garam juice, the soup, and a thanda juice. Now, when I ask you, which of them is unhealthy? Is the soup unhealthy or is the juice unhealthy? You would say none. They all seem to be
Yeah,
pretty healthy,
exactly.
right?
Yeah,
But I'd fall sick every time. Because when you have that cold and hot together, that combination doesn't work. So you can't have a Ronaldo and a Messi together in a team, the whole team will collapse.
Yeah.
The point is, you have to understand that combinations don't work. Like milk and fruit don't work together. Milk and jaggery don't work together. You can't have ghee and honey in the same quantity. So there are multiple rules and regulations that people knew. So that is Sanyog. So when you actually formulate a diet, you also have to understand what you're mixing. In the West, people mix everything in smoothies, right?
Yeah.
And look at the cancer rates there.
Yeah.
And we've always known that, listen, you can't mix this and this together. And look at the cancer rates now. But they will shoot because nowadays the parents don't know anything. They just mix everything. And that is why children, very young, start having allergic reactions to things. Start having autoimmune diseases and will definitely develop various cancers. I mean, you could probably blame packaging and all of that, and I'm sure they also have a contributing factor, but this also does.
This is a very important point to be noted.
It is an important point. So it's a very subset of an answer that I'm trying to give you. So I'll again rush through with the other points. So that's Sanyog. Then there is Rashi, which means that every element of your diet has to have a particular quantity that you consume. For example, the achar cannot be as much as a sabzi, and a sabzi cannot be as much as an achar. Right? So everything has a Rashi or a particular quantity it has to be consumed in. And in the Rashi also is the overall quantity that you consume. So portion control and all that will also be a part of it.
Yeah.
Then there is Desh, and Desh is something that very few people understand. So I always, we'll take the western part of India, right? So we'll take Punjab, makke di roti, the sarso da
Sarson da
saag.
saag, yeah.
You've probably heard of all of that, right? The stereotypical food there. But there, because you're away from the equator and you're away from the coastline, you're able to digest all of this,
Yeah.
right? Let's move a little south. We'll move to Rajasthan. So Rajasthan, I don't know, the dal batis,
Dal
right?
bati,
I mean, they don't put ghee in dal bati. They put dal bati and ghee. The amount of ghee they use is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right? But why? Dry climate. It's a desert area, right? It's very arid. So you need lubrication to counter that. And yet these are not easy to digest things. Right? The rotis are heavy to digest there. Then you move to Gujarat. And you'll realize that the overtone of the entire food is a little sweet. It's a little heavy. Yet the rotis have become a little thinner now because again you're moving towards the equator. So digestion is going lesser and lesser.
Yeah.
Then you move to Maharashtra, so the overtone has to become spicy to increase the agni in the body.
Yeah.
Because now you need help in digestion. You move down south where it's just skipping Goa, it's too small to be significant. But I mean, you know what, let's just take Kolhapur, Goa as one. So when you're moving towards the equator, you'll realize the spice levels increase. Because you need more agni to digest things. So from Makkah, we went to parothas, then we went to patli rotis. And now we'll move down to Karnataka where rotis are no longer digestible. So you only have rice and rice products. Right? Because now, forget Makkah, even wheat is a problem. Then you move a little down south and you'll realize that in Kerala, if you've been to a Keralian restaurant, there's a red color water. We call it Shadangapaniya in Sanskrit. I don't know the Malayali version of it. But even rice is difficult to digest because you're really down south now. So you have to realize that digestion changes according to the geographical location. So that is Desh, the climatic condition. The climatic condition doesn't change, the weather changes. So you have to eat according to climatic conditions. Right? Functional medicine or nothing of this. You go to a dietitian, whether you're in Kanyakumari or Kashmir, you're given X amount of proteins per your body weight. It is ridiculous. Moving on. So that is Desh. Then there is Kal, which is seasonal. So even within the climatic condition, every season has a different diet. Within the day, the time of the day will have a different kind of a diet. So mornings are going to be a little different, night has to be a little light. So all of these things are there. Upyokta, which means your particular allergies that you have, and Upyog Sanstha. Within Upyog Sanstha, there are 10 rules on how you eat. Not going to go into that details because I think we don't have that much time for the podcast. But now you tell me, does Ayurveda have to adapt to functional medicine?
No.
Absolutely not. I think when you actually look at the amount of things that Ayurveda looks at, and what I've explained to you is merely the tip of the iceberg. The iceberg goes so deep, and so few people know it that not only is it surprising, but it's also a little worrisome for me. I really try to be out there and try to explain things to people. But I do my best.
So can you let me know Ayurveda for chronic and lifestyle diseases? So I'll list you out few diseases and you can tell me how can Ayurveda help for that. So let's start with diabetes.
That's an entire podcast within itself. However, so I think a couple of problems, when people look at diabetes. People think diabetes is blood sugar, whereas it's not. Blood sugar is just one of the ways where we can actually predict statistically and not medically where diabetes is. Okay, so diabetes is not blood sugar. Diabetes is a complex metabolic disorder. And when we're actually talking about lifestyle diseases, you also have to understand most of these are metabolic disorders. So the role that the gut has to play here is always overlooked.
Yeah.
And because a metabolic disorder, you always have to focus on the gut where Ayurveda really shines. In diabetes, we look at 4 factors: medicines, diet, exercise and stress. And we try to address all of these 4 factors because we realize that when we look at all these 4 factors together, that gives us a much more clearer picture. We've been extremely successful with diabetes. In fact, Ayurveda in general, I believe, has been very successful. The government is also coming out with a lot of Ayurvedic medicines. But the problem that really occurs here is that the treatments are very unidimensional. People don't look at everything else. They just try to aggressively go behind blood sugar levels. You have people, who reduce diabetes in 72 hours by giving all kadwa things. But you have to understand the sustainability element of diabetes. No one's looking at. So we are actually doing that, right? We have to look at sustainability. Having kadwa things, reducing sugar is a very temporary quick fix.
Yeah. So next, hypertension, blood pressure.
Hypertension, blood pressure, in fact, we have very good treatment. It doesn't even take very long, frankly. We've treated and we've removed blood pressure for a lot of my patients. I think the biggest success story is my father. So he used to take blood pressure medicines he was prescribed by his cardiologist. And I think within about 3 months, we've stopped at blood pressure medicines. And it's been 3-4 years now. He's never had it again. And we've successfully been able to remove it.
That's great. Then next, heart disease.
I'll try to explain what heart disease, why heart disease happens. Heart disease actually happens because of something called as a lack of OJ in the body. So if you've heard these names of OJ, Ojas, some people name their kids Ojas, right? So you probably must have heard these names. So OJ in the body is basically nothing but the amount of stem cells that you have. And stem cells are of 2 types. So there is a superior one, which is the embryonic stem cells that is produced, when you're an embryo, right? That's why it's called embryonic. And adult stem cells are produced throughout your life. And these stem cells replace damaged cells in the body. So whenever the heart gets damaged due to a lot of reasons, these stem cells are responsible for trying to basically repair it. Whenever we run out of stem cells, that's when these sudden heart attacks, these sudden heart diseases, these sudden problems happen. Because stem cells is responsible for repair work of the body. Which is why we find people who are sometimes extremely fit, extremely muscular, who try to, do a lot of gymming, try to break their muscles constantly. Who's repairing those broken muscles?
Stem cells.
So when you use up too many stem cells, you are left with very few. And when the para-OJ in the body, which is actually quantified in Ayurveda, 6 drops in the heart, when that eventually has to be used up, that is when OJ is responsible for holding the 3 bodies together. So when that is used up, you will basically leave your body, which means you just drop. And that causes most heart diseases. How do you use up your OJ? Excessive sexual activity, alcohol intake. Are the 2 major reasons why your OJ goes down. And excessive breaking of your body muscles or tissues that require constant upkeep. So you could either use it more or you could manufacture it less. Manufacturing it less is because of either alcohol intake. Using it more is due to excessive sexual activity wherein you're replenishing your semen count, or in the females the lubricant that comes in, or you're using it up more because of either bodybuilding or trying to build excessive muscles.
Then kidney and liver health remedies for that.
I mean, I'm not going to give you home remedies for that because that's a very vast subject. However, kidney and liver is something that is great. I've seen most allopathic doctors
If
also.
not for that, any remedies for people going through hangover?
Let's start with the first remedy. Let's not go into hangover. However, I mean, there are a few herbs that will help.
Yeah.
I mean, very commonly used is lemon
Yeah.
or things, that are a little alkaline to neutralize the acidity. But see, alcohol does go through the blood-brain barrier and gets absorbed in the body before digestion,
Yeah.
which is why medicines that are alcoholic in preparation show very good results because they're absorbed very easily. But they can also show very negative results if overtaken.
Yeah.
So, I mean, yeah, that is there. But when it comes to liver health, I think Ayurveda, the amount of Ayurveda help that you can take is phenomenal. Liver and kidneys. Most liver doctors use Ayurvedic medicines. I mean, Liv52 is probably one of the most used and prescribed allopathic Ayurvedic medicine by allopaths, right? And even in kidneys, when it comes to kidneys, because seen more than enough nephrologists and I have a lot of nephrologist friends. And trust me when I say this, you would rather of go to an Ayurvedic doctor for a kidney issue.
Gastric and digestion issues.
Yes, so digestion and gastric issues, specifically when it comes to chronic acidity, gas, bloating, breathing issues because of gas, right? So all of these issues, Ayurveda has phenomenal results. Because again, Ayurveda, the amount of understanding and the amount of treatments in digestion that Ayurveda has here, digestion, immunity, liver, kidneys, these are something no one can take away from us. These are definitely our fortes.
So now lastly, let me ask you about dengue and other infectious diseases, because I know you have been awarded couple of times for the dengue disease.
Yeah, dengue is something that, I mean, he's been kind to me. We do not use papaya. First of all, let me make that very, very clear. None of our medicines have papaya in them for dengue. But we've been successfully treating dengue within about 3 days for almost all of our patients. Maybe a handful that I could count in one palm of my hand that have not been treated. And I have been pretty famous as a dengue doctor. I mean, people have been coming for me from everywhere. I have in fact had inquiries from different countries like Sri Lanka where they wanted help with their dengue issues in the post-tsunamic regions. I think West Bengal MLAs also come from a lot of different states. They've been trying to get my help for treating dengue because most of my cases, I think 1 day or maximum 2 days that you stay at home and you can actually go to work, and there's no permanent liver damage that normally happens with dengue. Otherwise, dengue for a common man takes about 3 weeks.
Yeah,
3 weeks for the
3
person
weeks,
to start work again, because the disease itself and then the recovery and then the probable...
The body to go back to normal. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it really takes time.
Yeah, so dengue is something that we've been very, very successful with, and God is kind. There's nothing much to say.
So can you tell few Ayurvedic tips for stress?
So stress is nothing but a misuse of imagination, right? I think what the Bhagavad Gita says answers almost every question, wherein you just need to focus on the role that you're playing and play it to the best of your ability, irrespective of the result. The more you think about the result, the more you're stressed. However, there are a few tips that you can use. The first one that comes to mind is you can have cow's ghee, right? And you can start putting 3 drops in the nostril, especially before you sleep. That really calms your mind down. There are a few therapies in Ayurveda like Shirodhara that also help you calm a little down. And there are herbs like Brahmi that will help you with the mind. There are a few medicines as well that can help. So all in all, I think if you just start doing this, you should be in a better space. Also ensure that digestion is a little better, your motions are a little clear, because the vata that increases due to that can also contribute to stress.
So can you tell tips for digestion also?
I mean, if you have indigestion, dry ginger powder works very well. You can use dry ginger powder about a teaspoon a day. That will help with digestion. And when I talk about digestion, I'm actually talking about breaking down and absorption of food. But if you are asking me for excretion and for constipation, then you can use herbs like harad, which is harade. Terminalia chebula is the Latin name, the fruit. Also, you can use triphala, which does contain harade. So you can use all of these things to ensure motions are clear. If you have a lot of gas associated with the motions, then you can also use castor oil. Doesn't taste good, but it really gives good results.
And something which is best for your gut health, immunity.
Best for immunity, I mean, there are a lot of things that do increase immunity. Avala is definitely one of them. Giloy is another of them. Amla and giloy will both improve your liver-based immunity, but if you're looking for more of a respiratory-based immunity, then I feel you could probably have 6 balls of black pepper and gulp it down without chewing them or crushing them on an empty stomach, and that really should help with respiratory immunity. So these, I think, are very quick hacks that you can maybe use.
Thank you for sharing them. Can you share some remedies for better sleep?
The same with the cow's ghee. If you have 2 to 3 drops of cow's ghee at night before sleeping, because it relieves stress, sleep definitely improves. Also, a lot of times I've noticed clinically when a lot of patients come in, they have this one window, right, about 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock-ish, I guess, wherein they naturally get sleep, and then they shun that window because they're either doing something or probably they're watching a series or someone's coming home, or is this for them it's too early to sleep because they have this notion that you can't sleep so early, right?
Yeah.
So then once they shun that window, and then when they go to sleep at about 12, 12:30, they don't get sleep because the body works in a very circadian cycle, way. So you should try to sleep at the same time every single day for your body to get used to it. And if you're not able to do that, start having a bath with cold water and not warm water. That really helps you reset your body cycle. So you can do that. So I feel when it comes to sleep, abhyas, or doing the same thing over and over again, really becomes helpful. Extremely helpful, actually.
So how can Ayurveda help to balance your work life?
Ayurveda is a science of life. Understand this. We as human beings, we live in 3 different dimensions at the same time. The first dimension that we live in is we live with the environment, with nature, with people. And we've been taught this very well. We have civic sense, where how we interact with people, how we interact with elders, with youngers, with seniors, with juniors. So we have all of that understanding. But we are also living at the second dimension with our own body-mind complex. And that's not really taught. Ayurveda comes in and fills that gap. It teaches you how to live with your own body, with how to live with your own mind. And the third layer, the third dimension that we live in is we live with a lot of higher energies that we may or may not be aware about. So when we actually learn about all of these 3 dimensions, the chances of us living a happier life is always better. Of course, when it comes to work, Ayurveda has a lot of tips when it comes to, how much sleep you should get, how much physical activity you should do. So all of these things are important. We have a very, very good test, that shows us what
Can you tell our audience how much should we sleep?
Yeah, so it really depends on quite a few factors.
Yeah.
However, for a common man, a middle-aged person, I think if the quality of sleep is always bigger than quantity. However, if you were to push me for quantity, I'd say about 7 to 8 hours is good, right? Understand, the kids sleep longer hours, very high quality, it's not just longer hours. And kids recover very, very quickly. And you've seen those old age uncles and aunties sleep for 3 hours, 4 hours.
4 hours, yeah.
They don't recover very well. So you also have to understand that the regeneration or the recovery is very important, and most of it happens during sleep. If you're not a meditator, it mostly happens during sleep. So sleep is very important. It's one of the 3 pillars of Ayurveda. So you have to understand quality of sleep takes precedence, however quantity is important.
Yeah. So can you let me know some Ayurvedic secrets for weight loss?
So weight gain, according to the World Health Organization, happens because of 3 reasons. Either there is an increase in number of fat cells, or an increase in size of fat cells, or both.
Yeah.
Most people who come to me, for some reason, assume that there is number of fat cells that have increased. And because of that, they're trying to burn fats. So they have garam pani, nimbu, honey, apple cider vinegar, flax seed, sunflower seed, pumpkin seed, methi dana, tulsi patta, green teas, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
Right? And then they don't end up losing the amount of weight proportionate to the amount of work they're putting in. Because in Bombay, and I think this is more Bombay specific, the size of the fat cells increase. Why does that happen? Is because of fat contains something called as a vesicle, which is an elastic theli that contains water. So I'll give you a very simple example. If I have 10 patients that come to my clinic, I can only see 1 at a time, and I'll keep 9 waiting. That's the only way I can see a patient. So similarly, when you gulp a lot of water at once, your kidneys cannot deal with everything. So what it does, it deals with the amount that it can, and it stores the others in the fat cells nearby, which gives this belly fat. And that water retention that is more intracellular is very, very difficult to remove. So a very, very easy tip is please start sipping water and stop gulping water even though you don't need to reduce the quantity of water. In fact, even if you go to a Nike, Puma, Adidas or any sports store, you'll find that there are specific sports bottles there. You don't find any other bottle. You know why that bottle is there and why it's so expensive? Obviously because of the branding there, but also because it's engineered in a way to make athletes avoid gulping water. When you drink water, when you touch your mouth there and when you suck, a little water will come and then the bottle will close on itself. Then you have to remove it, wait for it to open back up before you can do this again. So it's engineered in a way for you to sip water. That's how you will maintain your body weight. So if you're asking for one tip, just start sipping water. There are
This is
multiple.
a very valuable information for everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean my obesity video got,
Yeah.
I think the maximum amount of views. So I guess it is.
Yeah.
But definitely, you know, you have to identify which problem you have, whether it's the number of fat cells, the size of fat cells, and address it, and then you will get the bang for the buck.
So is there any Ayurvedic diet for strength and fitness also?
Of course there is. In fact, we've been treating a lot of athletes, a lot of actors, a lot of celebrities who do require this, not only to look strong but to actually be strong.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of herbs, we have specific diets for that. We definitely help people out who are looking for this kind of for treatment. Ayurveda, no, doesn't just focus on curative treatment. It also focuses on maintaining and improving. So you're actually looking at preventing diseases. You're looking at improving, so it's more of preventive medicine, promotive medicine, not just restricted to curative medicine. So if a healthy person goes to an allopathic doctor, the doctor doesn't have anything to say. But when they come to us, we have a lot of things to say.
Yeah.
We can help them in a lot of ways.
So Ayurveda is often questioned for scientific proof.
It is, and things are skewed in a way, I would like to believe intentionally, for this question. I'll tell you why. As I've mentioned twice before, in Ayurveda we do not treat diseases, we treat individuals. And the entire way that you are to check for efficacy of a medicine is based on a disease. So for example, if I have 100 patients who are all suffering with diabetes, and I am giving one drug to all these 100, how many show results? That works great because allopathy works on diseases.
Yeah.
And Ayurveda works on individuals.
Individuals,
So
yeah.
let's say you have diabetes because of stress. Another person has diabetes because of
Eating
gluttony.
habits. Yeah, maybe.
A third person has diabetes because the only exercise they do is press the remote button.
Yeah.
Right? And the fourth has because of some other issue.
Yeah.
So all of them in Ayurveda cannot be given the same medicine.
Yeah.
So you're going to give all of them different medicines. When I do that in the allopathic research module, it won't work. Why will it not work? Because the research module is not made for individualized treatments. But let me tell you this very, very clearly, and I can repeat this 1,000 times on camera. When you do single case studies, Ayurveda will be far superior. So as a consumer, as a patient, you don't care about 100 people being treated because you're not getting 100 same patients to a single doctor.
Correct.
What you care is am I treated. So what you care about is you care about single case studies, and that is also scientific. So when you talk about single case studies, Ayurveda not only is proven but is far, far ahead of allopathy. But when you talk about case studies and that scientific module, you have to understand the module is disease oriented and you're actually trying to fit a patient or an individual oriented system into a disease oriented model and say, hold on, it doesn't fit. Of course it doesn't fit. Your module itself is skewed. That's why.
So when you told me about this allopathy medicine, Ayurveda medicine, so can it be like Ayurveda and this modern medicines work together rather than replacing each other?
No, they definitely can work together. In many cases they do, but in many cases they don't. Because the entire principle and the understanding is different. Like I said, in asthma, the disease is the stomach related. It's not a lung related disease, right? The lungs are the affected organ, they're not the root cause. So you could use allopathic techniques because allopathy is great when it comes to relief. So a lot of times patients require relief, and especially in acute cases. So you could take allopathy's help when it comes to relief, but you're actually trying to cure the problem at the root, wherein you can use Ayurveda. So in that way they do work together. Also, when it comes to deworming or when it comes to killing things, I think allopathy works great in killing things. So you could also use that, right? But Ayurveda works more in terms of building your system. See, allopathy is a very convenient science because you are never at fault. You know, if you have dengue, machhar is at fault.
Yeah.
If you have another problem, that bacteria came and infected, you're always the bichara. You're always the person who has done no harm, has done no wrong, and you're always affected by something. In Ayurveda, no, you have to take responsibility for your health. Also, allopathy is a very convenient science because you're never at fault. It's a virus who came and infected you. It's a bacteria who came and infected you. You're always the bichara who's always suffering, right? And nature's out there to kill you. But that's not how Ayurveda looks at nature. It doesn't look at it as an evil entity who's out there trying to kill you. All bacteria are trying to hunt you down. Viruses, all mosquitoes want to kill you. We look at it as, you know, trying to live in harmony with nature, trying to understand it. And you are responsible for your diseases because you have to build your immunity to that level. You know, the common cold touched, as a droplet infection, it touched 20 people, but you're the one who got a cold. So your immune system is weak. So which is why allopathy is great at killing things. Ayurveda is great at building things. So when we're actually talking about building immunity, building strength, building health, that's when Ayurveda comes in. So allopathy has its great roles. I think it's very important in today's world, but Ayurveda cannot be replaced.
So lastly, I want to discuss with you about Ayurveda and detoxification. So how does Panchakarma help in this?
In Ayurveda, there is a shlok that explains this very simply. And let me try to explain this with a very simple example. Let's say you're a teacher teaching a group of children. And let's say a child is very, very naughty, you know, like me. So you'll just make a, so you'll just cause chaos, cause a ruckus. The teacher will tell the child, you know, sit down, don't speak, pay attention, twice, thrice, 4 times, depending on how much patience level the teacher has. Eventually, if the child continues to cause a problem, the child will be asked to leave the class. This is the difference between the two treatment modalities of Ayurveda. The first is called Shaman treatment, wherein if one of the doshas really increases, we try to actually calm it down. We explain to the dosha, hold on, you're not going to trouble the other class, relax. But when it doesn't listen to you, you have to say, listen, you have to go out. And this going out mechanism is Panchakarma. The benefit of this is once the child is out of the class, he can no longer create the ruckus. So you're actually removing the dosha from the body rather than palliating it. And by doing this, the chances of recurrence are 0. So you're solving the problem without a worry of recurrence. And which is why these kind of Panchakarma detoxes are absolutely essential. In an Ayurveda, it's written that every individual should have done this once in a year. If you can't do it once in a year, do it as often as you can, because they will disallow you from aging, from tissues breaking, from any major diseases, because diseases do not come overnight. They take a long time to build, and if you break them, you're actually disease free. See, when you're losing toxins, it gives you this sort of a childlike energy. Your body becomes so supple. And diseases that have been building or toxins that have been building just go away. I think it's one of the best feelings, and most patients, knowingly or unknowingly, are actually chasing it. This feeling, they're all chasing it.
No, because when you say you take allopathy medicines and all, you know, somewhere it starts damaging your liver, your kidney, or anything. But you're telling if you're doing this Panchakarma, does it, recover a specific
if it is recoverable,
organ,
yes.
but it doesn't affect the other?
Absolutely. If it is recoverable, yes. I mean, the best way I can explain it is if I take a rubber band. If I stretch it to a certain limit and if I leave it, it will go back to its original shape. If I stretch it a little beyond, there will be permanent stretch which I can never reverse. And if it breaks, it breaks. So it really depends whether it's recoverable or not. If it is recoverable, we will recover it.
So lastly, can you let us know some simple detox habits?
Yeah, let you know some Ayurvedic healthy habits that you should use. First of all, always drink boiled water. Second of all, try to use rock salt. Try and avoid using the Himalayan pink salt. I know this is going to be very controversial. Just trust me on this. Do not use the pink one, use the white rock salt. It will be a little pink, but it's not that Himalayan one that is marketed. The third tip is try and be very active. try and have a bath with cold water. Try and not use hot water too much. Do not have any curd items, especially after sunset. Don't have milk fruit, milk jaggery, milk fish within 2 hours of each other. Don't have milk in curd within 2 hours of each other. And yeah, the best tip that I have is go to an Ayurvedic doctor every 3 to 4 months to get your nadi checked, even if you don't have a disease, because he might give you a few home remedies, or she might give you a few home remedies or diet changes. That is the best health insurance that you can do, because you will just never fall sick. Because you'll never allow the doshas to increase, because nadi parikshan can actually catch the doshas at a very, very primitive state. So we will just not allow the doshas to increase, so you're never really diseased. That's the best tip I have for you. I did that as a child before I became a doctor, and I'd recommend all of you all do the same.
Thank you so much, Dr. Gandhi, for coming on our show and sharing your knowledge and your experience with our audiences.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Ayurveda is not just about herbs and treatments. It's a way of life that connects our body, mind and nature. Today, Dr. Manaan Gandhi has shown us how this Asian wisdom is evolving with modern science to heal, restore and transform lives. Whether it's managing chronic disease, improving daily well-being or embracing a holistic lifestyle, Ayurveda has something for everyone. Stay tuned for more powerful conversations on Imperia Connects, where we explore the best ways to nurture ourselves and our families. Until next time, stay healthy and stay mindful.